What are archetypes and how do they shape your life? The hidden forces that shape us. Picture this. You're scrolling through social media, and you come across a story that stops you dead in your tracks. Maybe it's about a hero overcoming impossible odds, or a mentor guiding someone to their destiny, or even a rebel breaking free from society's constraints. Something about it resonates so deeply that you can't shake it from your mind for days. Have you ever wondered why certain stories, characters, or even people in your own life feel so familiar, even when you've never encountered them before? Why do you find yourself drawn to the same types of relationships, facing similar challenges, or even making choices that seem to follow invisible patterns? What if I told you that there are ancient, universal forces operating beneath the surface of your consciousness? Forces that have been shaping human behavior, stories, and experiences for thousands of years. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, called these forces archetypes. Today, we are going to dive deep into this fascinating aspect of human psychology and discover how these archetypal patterns might be the invisible architects of your life. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand what archetypes are, but you'll also learn how to identify them in your own psyche and, most importantly, how to work with them consciously to create more authentic, fulfilling experiences. So let me ask you this. Are you ready to discover the hidden patterns that have been guiding your life all along? What are archetypes? Jung's revolutionary discovery. Carl Jung spent decades studying the human mind, and one of his most profound discoveries was that deep within our unconscious, we all share certain universal patterns of behavior and imagery. He called these patterns archetypes, from the Greek words arche, meaning original, and typos, meaning pattern or model. Think of archetypes as the original templates of human experience. They're like invisible blueprints that exist in what Jung termed the collective unconscious, influencing how we perceive the world, relate to others, and understand ourselves. Jung believed that these aren't just abstract concepts, they're living, dynamic forces that actively shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When he studied myths, fairy tales, and stories from cultures around the world, he noticed the same characters appearing again and again. The wise old man, the nurturing mother, the innocent child, the shadow trickster, the heroic warrior. But here's where it gets really interesting. Jung realized that these weren't just characters in stories. They were reflections of universal aspects of the human psyche that exist within all of us. Consider your own life for a moment. Have you ever felt called to help others, to guide, or protect them? That might be your inner caregiver or mentor archetype awakening. Have you ever felt rebellious, wanting to break free from convention and forge your own path? That could be your rebel or outlaw archetype speaking. Or perhaps you've experienced times when you felt completely innocent and curious about the world, approaching life with wonder and trust. That's your innocent archetype emerging. And we've all had moments when we've had to summon courage to face challenges that seemed insurmountable. That's when our hero archetype steps forward. Jung discovered that these archetypal energies don't just influence us occasionally. They're constantly at work beneath the surface of our conscious awareness, shaping how we interpret experiences, what attracts or repels us, and even how we construct our sense of identity. What makes this so powerful is that when we become conscious of these patterns, we gain incredible insight into why we do what we do. We start to understand that many of our seemingly personal struggles and attractions are actually universal human experiences, played out through these ancient archetypal patterns. The collective unconscious, our shared human heritage. To truly understand archetypes, we need to explore Jung's concept of the collective unconscious. While your personal unconscious contains your individual forgotten memories and repressed experiences, the collective unconscious is something far more profound. It's the deepest layer of the unconscious mind that we all share as human beings. Jung described it as a kind of psychic inheritance, containing the accumulated experiences of our entire species. Imagine it as a vast underground river that flows beneath all human consciousness, connecting us to every person who has ever lived. This might sound mystical, but Jung was a scientist, and he found evidence for this shared unconscious everywhere he looked. When he studied the dreams, visions, and fantasies of his patients, He noticed that people who had never been exposed to certain mythological symbols would spontaneously produce the same imagery in their unconscious material. For example, a patient who had never studied Eastern philosophy might dream of a mandala, a circular, symmetrical pattern that represents wholeness and the self. Or someone might have visions of a wise old man or woman offering guidance, even if they had no knowledge of this archetypal figure from world mythology. This is why certain movies, books, or songs can move us so deeply, even when we can't explain why. They're tapping into these archetypal patterns that exist in our collective unconscious. The reason Star Wars resonates with people across cultures isn't just because it's entertaining. It's because it follows the archetypal pattern of the hero's journey, with Luke Skywalker embodying the innocent hero guided by the wise mentor, Obi-Wan, and facing his shadow in the form of Darth Vader. Think about your own life experiences. Have you ever met someone for the first time and felt like you'd known them forever? Or encountered a situation that felt strangely familiar, even though you'd never experienced it before? This might be your collective unconscious recognizing archetypal patterns. The beautiful thing about understanding the collective unconscious is that it helps us realize we are never truly alone in our experiences. That deep longing you feel, that struggle you're facing, that dream you're pursuing, chances are, it's connected to universal human themes that have been playing out for millennia. The major archetypes and how they show up in your life. Now let's explore some of the major archetypes that Jung identified, and see how they might be showing up in your own life. Remember, we all contain multiple archetypes within us, and different ones may be more dominant at different times or in different areas of our lives. The innocent archetype embodies our natural state of wonder, trust, and optimism. When this archetype is active in your life, you approach the world with curiosity and hope. You believe in the goodness of people and maintain faith that things will work out. Think about times when you felt genuinely happy and carefree. That's your innocent archetype expressing itself. But the innocent can also manifest as naivety or denial when we refuse to acknowledge life's harsh realities. Have you ever been accused of being too trusting or optimistic? That might be your innocent archetype needing balance. The hero archetype drives us to overcome challenges and prove our worth. This is the part of you that rises to meet difficulties head-on, that refuses to give up when things get tough. Every time you've pushed through fear to achieve something meaningful, you are channeling your inner hero. However, the hero can also become destructive when we constantly seek conflict or feel we have to save everyone around us. Do you find yourself always taking on other people's problems? Your hero archetype might be running the show a bit too much. The caregiver archetype expresses itself through our desire to help, nurture, and protect others. This might show up in your career choice, your relationships, or simply in how you interact with the world. The caregiver finds deep fulfillment in serving others and creating safety and comfort. But the shadow side of the caregiver is martyrdom, sacrificing yourself to the point where you lose your own identity. If you find yourself constantly giving but never receiving, or feeling resentful about how much you do for others, your caregiver archetype may be unbalanced. The explorer archetype fuels our need for freedom, adventure, and authentic experience. This is the part of you that craves new experiences, hates being trapped or confined, and always wants to see what's over the next hill. Explorers are driven by a deep need to find themselves through experience. When unbalanced, the explorer can become a perpetual wanderer, never committing to anything or anyone, always seeking something better elsewhere. The sage archetype represents our quest for truth and understanding. Sages are driven by the desire to comprehend the world and share wisdom with others. If you're someone who loves learning, seeks to understand deeper meanings, or feels called to teach others, your sage archetype is strong. The shadow of the sage is becoming overly intellectual or dogmatic, losing touch with emotion and practical life in favor of abstract ideas. The creator archetype expresses our need to make something meaningful and lasting. This doesn't just apply to artists. Anyone who builds businesses, creates solutions, or brings new ideas into the world is channeling their creator archetype. When unbalanced, the creator can become obsessed with perfection or may start many projects but never finish them. As you reflect on these archetypes, which ones resonate most strongly with you? Which patterns do you see playing out in your own life story? Shadow archetypes, the patterns we resist. Now we come to one of Jung's most important concepts, the shadow. Jung believed that for every archetype we consciously identify with, there's also a shadow version, the aspects of that archetype that we repress, deny, or project onto others. The shadow isn't inherently evil. It simply contains the parts of ourselves we've decided are unacceptable. But here's the crucial insight. What we resist in ourselves, we often encounter repeatedly in our external world. Let's say you strongly identify with the caregiver archetype. You see yourself as someone who's always there for others, always giving, always supportive. Your shadow might contain the rebel or the destroyer, the parts of you that want to say no, that want to put yourself first, or that feel angry about always giving. If you don't acknowledge these shadow aspects, you might find yourself attracting people who are selfish or rebellious, or you might experience sudden outbursts of anger that seem to come from nowhere. The shadow has a way of making itself known, whether we welcome it or not. Think about the people in your life who really trigger you. What qualities do they have that you find most irritating or unacceptable? Jung would suggest that these qualities might represent disowned parts of your own psyche, shadow aspects that you haven't integrated. This doesn't mean you should become the things you dislike, but rather that you should acknowledge these potentials within yourself. When you can own your capacity for selfishness, for example, you can make conscious choices about when to give and when to receive. When you deny this capacity entirely, it operates unconsciously and often destructively. The destroyer archetype is often relegated to the shadow in our culture. We don't like to think of ourselves as destructive, but destruction is a necessary part of life. Sometimes old patterns, relationships, or ways of being need to die for new growth to occur. When we can't access our inner destroyer consciously, we might stay stuck in situations that no longer serve us, or we might experience destruction in unconscious ways, through self-sabotage or attracting chaos. The shadow archetype itself represents the trickster energy, the part of us that's unpredictable, that challenges authority, that breaks rules. In many cultures, the trickster is a sacred figure because it brings necessary change and keeps things from becoming too rigid. But in our shadow, this energy might express as deception, manipulation, or undermining behavior. Here's a powerful question for self-reflection. What aspects of yourself do you work hardest to hide from others? What would happen if you acknowledged these parts with compassion rather than judgment? Working with your archetypes consciously. Understanding your archetypal patterns is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you learn to work with these energies consciously rather than being unconsciously driven by them. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming who you truly are by integrating all aspects of your psyche, including the shadow parts you'd rather ignore. The first step is developing what Jung called archetypal awareness. Start paying attention to the patterns in your life. What themes keep recurring? What types of people do you attract? What roles do you find yourself playing in different relationships? Keep a journal and notice when different archetypal energies are active. When do you feel most like a hero? When does your caregiver emerge? What triggers your rebel or your sage? This awareness alone can be incredibly liberating because it helps you realize that you're not stuck in any one pattern. Next, practice conscious choice. Instead of being unconsciously driven by archetypal energies, you can learn to invoke them intentionally. Facing a difficult challenge? Consciously connect with your hero archetype. Need to be creative? Call upon your creator energy. Feeling disconnected from wisdom? Spend time cultivating your sage. But here's what's really important. Don't try to eliminate the archetypes you don't like. Instead, learn to work with them skillfully. If your destroyer archetype makes you uncomfortable, explore how you might use this energy constructively, perhaps to destroy limiting beliefs or unhealthy patterns rather than suppressing it entirely. Shadow work is perhaps the most important aspect of archetypal integration. Jung believed that we can only become whole by acknowledging and integrating our shadow aspects. This doesn't mean acting on every shadow impulse, but rather bringing these energies into consciousness where we can work with them skillfully. One powerful practice is to dialogue with your archetypes. When you're facing a decision or challenge, imagine consulting different archetypal energies within you. What would your sage advise? How would your hero approach this situation? What would your caregiver prioritize? This helps you access the full spectrum of your inner wisdom rather than being locked into one perspective. Remember, the goal isn't to transcend your archetypal nature but to dance with it more consciously. These patterns exist for a reason. They've helped humans navigate life successfully for thousands of years. The key is learning to use them as tools for growth rather than being unconsciously controlled by them. Embracing your archetypal nature. As we come to the end of our exploration today, I want you to take a moment to reflect on everything we've discovered about archetypes and their influence on your life. We've seen how these universal patterns operate beneath the surface of consciousness, how they connect us to the deepest aspects of human experience, and how they can either limit us or liberate us, depending on how consciously we work with them. The beautiful truth that Jung discovered is that you are not just an isolated individual struggling alone with your problems and dreams. You are part of an ancient, ongoing human story, and the patterns that move through your life have been moving through human hearts and minds for millennia. This means that the hero's journey you're on, the love you seek, the creativity you want to express, the wisdom you're gaining, all of this connects you to something vast and meaningful. Your personal growth is not just about you. It's part of the larger evolution of human consciousness. But here's what I want you to remember most. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Understanding your archetypal patterns is only the beginning. The real magic happens when you begin to work with these energies consciously in your daily life. So here's your challenge. Over the next week, pay attention to which archetypal energies are most active in your life. Notice when you're operating from your hero, when your caregiver emerges, when your sage speaks up, or when your shadow tries to get your attention. And most importantly, start having conversations with these different aspects of yourself. Ask them what they need, what they're trying to tell you, and how they want to contribute to your growth. Your psyche is not a problem to be solved but a symphony to be conducted. Each archetypal voice has something valuable to offer, even the ones that make you uncomfortable. Your job is to become the conscious conductor of this inner orchestra, creating harmony rather than chaos. The patterns that have been shaping your life don't have to remain unconscious. You have the power to work with them deliberately, to honor their wisdom while also exercising conscious choice about how they express through you. What archetypal energy will you consciously invoke in your life this week? What shadow aspect are you ready to acknowledge with compassion? What part of your authentic self are you ready to embrace more fully? I'd love to hear about your discoveries in the comments below. Share which archetype resonates most strongly with you, or tell us about a pattern you've noticed in your own life that you're now seeing through this archetypal lens. And if this exploration has opened up new insights for you, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the wisdom that can transform your life. Remember, your journey toward greater self-awareness and authentic living isn't just personal. It's part of the larger human story of awakening. Until next time, may you dance consciously with the ancient patterns that live within you, and may you discover the profound freedom that comes from knowing yourself at the deepest levels.